Our show, of course, brought to you by our friends at RacingPicks. It is the RacingPicks Players Podcast, after all. Actually, RacingPicks.com Players Podcast, if I'm using the proper name of the show. Check it out. Free racing analysis and picks. You got to just give your email. Hit on the expert picks area on RacingPicks.com. Give your email. Great stuff from the likes of Matt Bernier, Andrew Champagne. Heck, I even write on there from time to time. Hopefully going to be getting to do a little bit more of that. Go to RacingPicks.com today. Hello and welcome to the Racing Picks Players Podcast. This is our show for a loaded weekend of racing, and we've got great guests for you. We're going to kick it off with Gabby Gaudet. Then we're going to bring in Alan Studer from the Stucast. Blake Jessee will be here to talk about Keeneland. Alan will be doing Belmont, by the way. And we'll wrap things up with our buddy Drew Coatney to talk all things Woodbine. And it's all going to start right after this. Want to tell folks about this exciting new offer from TwinSpires. So many offers from different ADWs are for new customers. This one is for returning customers. ITM 200 gets anybody, even if you already have a TwinSpires account, a great bet 200, get 200 offer. Go to their website and put in the code to claim this bonus. I'm going to make it easy for you. We'll set it up through the In the Money site, inthemoneypodcast.com/TwinSpires. That's inthemoneypodcast.com/TwinSpires to claim your $200 bonus offer.
Sorry if...
Who's that? Who's the special guest?
This is Waylon. He really likes to make cameo appearances.
We know all about that. We know all about that on the network. I think we're going to leave that. I just noticed producer Craig hit record. I think we're going to leave that in, and I'll just bring you in now. So happy to have for her first appearance on the RacingPicks.com Players Podcast, but a regular on our broadcast in general. Gabby Gaudet, how are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so excited about the weekend that's ahead. Really all over the country. The Preakness, the undercard, Fall Stars weekend too. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be at Pimlico. It's like the first time in a very long time, but I'm excited to talk about it. And what a weekend of racing we have on tap for us coming up.
I think you have a pretty good excuse for missing this year with everything going on and all of your other responsibilities. But yeah, let's talk about this late pick 4 on the Preakness card. There's so much stakes racing. There's a ton of good stuff. But for the purposes of time, I figure we'll limit it to the later bit of the card. And we start off with this really interesting 2-year-old stake. When I say the late pick 4, I'm leaving out the Arabian race and talking about the sequence that closes with the Preakness. I realize now I wasn't clear about that in my text to you. Did you? But is that okay?
Yeah, I figured that. I put 2 and 2 together because I'm not well versed on Arabian racing. Could maybe get through it, but yeah, that's tough.
Well, so all right. With that in mind, we've got the Laurel Futurity, a mile and a 16th on the turf. What do you like in this one, Gabby?
This is a very interesting race. I think the conversation kind of starts with Pivotal Mission and just what he's going to do. Graham has 2 horses in here. One's making his North American debut, Wooten Asset, and then also Pivotal Mission. And I wanted to pick Pivotal Mission, but I really do think he's got a lot to learn still, Pete. I went back and I watched his last race in the stakes race at Kentucky Downs, and he was just he was on the wrong lead. He was lugging in, and I'm guessing on this, but I would imagine that Johnny Velasquez came back and talked to Graham and said, maybe this horse would benefit from blinkers. So I don't necessarily want to go with him because of that. I still think he needs to take a step forward. Whereas Arrest Me Red, Arnaud Delacour's horse by Pioneer of the Nile, this horse looks serious. And I know he only broke his maiden first start, but he did it in hand. It looked like he can stretch out. He's a big, good-looking horse. So that's where I landed in the futurity.
I was going to take a shot with that other Graham Motion runner that you mentioned, Wooten Asset, watching the tape and checking in with some friends who follow French racing a little bit more. That stakes race 2 back, The form of that's working out really well with the top three all coming back to run in the money at the Group 3 level. Just visually looked like the ground was too soft the last day. And in those wins especially, looked a nice mover. I feel like it's a real vote of confidence for Graham to put this horse in this spot. And I figure this one could get overlooked in the betting with a bunch of different ways to go. So I'll take a little shot with number 3, Wooten Asset, to kick this pick 4 off. And with that, we'll move on to race number 9. We've got the James W. Murphy, $100,000 in the pot for 3-year-olds on the grass. What did you come up with here?
So I went to the 12 Andesite for Brad Cox. The way I see this race, I think it's going to feature a pretty quick pace, at least an honest pace. So I'm not saying that it's going to collapse, but I do think it would help a horse like Andesite. And he's not, his last race, you kind of have to look at the past couple of races, even dating back to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and his debut this year. Go back to his race at Keeneland. Gray's Creek was sensational in that race. It was one of the most impressive races of the week, in my opinion, for trainer Chad Brown. He came back over a yielding going at Indiana Grand. He did not run very well. And then finally it all came together for him last time out. Now, I know it was a much easier field. This is a much tougher field. But I do think he's a little bit better than what his last race would suggest. I think he can take a couple steps forward. And it's Brad Cox. It's Florent Geroux. He looks like he's just going to sit the right trip.
I have little to add. That was my note as well. Number 12, Andesite as the best possible closer in a race with plenty of speed. I did also note as a positive that this one's been working with Beau Recall, the multiple stakes winner. I thought that was a little bit interesting. I think it's going to work out very well for Andesite. You think there's a shot we can get a price anywhere close to what we have on the morning line here?
Nope.
You think everybody's going to come up with the same horse?
Well, it's also, the horse is just logical. He makes sense. And it's also Brad. It's also Florent. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like 5-1. I think if we're lucky, I just don't think we're going to get double-digit odds on this horse.
Yeah, I'd still sign on at 5-1, honestly. I think the horse just makes all the sense in the world in this spot. Let's move on to our 10th race. We go to graded stakes action with the Grade 2 Black Eyed Susan going 1 1/8 on the dirt. I'll go first on this one simply because my opinion is so boring. Number 5, Bonnie South, looks like the fastest horse. Should also get a fantastic setup. Form very strong, well rested, good looking works. Looks like all systems go to me. Can you be a little bit more creative in the Black Eyed Susan?
Nope.
We're going to win or lose together today, it sounds like.
I will say, though, and, I am biased here, but I really like Mizzenbo and the progression that she's made. Obviously, she's trained by my husband, Norm. But, I think it's been a learning curve for her. He shipped her up to Woodbine. It wasn't an ideal race for her in her first stakes race up at Woodbine. And then he kept her up there, and it seemed like she really acclimated and she grew and she matured a lot. So much so that she finally got the victory last time out. And she's such a compact horse, Pete, that, it's been an evolution for her whether or not she wants to sprint or go long. Because if you watch her races, she's got this quick, short little stride, and she kind of looks like a sprinter. But I think she can route, and she obviously proved that last time out. Now, she's probably going to have more pace pressure in the Black Eyed Susan, but I do think she's a legitimate filly. I mean, she finished second to She Dares the Devil, who won the Oak. So maybe she's an outsider that you can pay attention to.
I love that idea. And somebody's going to prove the best of speed in that scrum, and Mizzenbo should be a nice price. So we appreciate the insider's view on that one in this year's Black Eyed Susan. Let's move on, Gabby, and talk about the main event. It's a loaded weekend, but I think for many people, the main event is still going to be seen as the Grade 1 Preakness. A win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup this year. Obviously, major divisional implications as well. I know this is one of your favorite races, one you've seen countless runnings of. Who do you think is going to win this year's running?
Can I be boring again?
Yes.
Again, I think that it's so tough though, because, going into the Kentucky Derby, we thought that there was going to be such a contentious pace. It was a fast pace in the Derby, but it wasn't contentious. And the thing with the situation in the Derby, 1,000 words scratched in the paddock, King Guillermo defected, Art Collector defected. All of these horses who have speed were no longer in the field, and Authentic, had the ability to get into position going into the first turn and keep going. I'm curious how the pace scenario will change in the Preakness and if he can adapt to that. I do think he can. Obviously, the other horse in the conversation is Art Collector. I really liked going into the Kentucky Derby. And then I guess the outside horse, a long shot. I will give you a long shot, okay, to use. Pneumatic. He, to me, just seems like a Preakness horse. I don't know why. He just kind of gives me that vibe that for Steve Asmussen, he might just deliver on Saturday. So he's kind of the double-digit 20-1 type of horse that I will be using in exotics.
I'm going to ask you to use your crystal ball here and drill down into that question you brought up about the pace. It's very, very interesting. Authentic drawn outside on pace figures anyway, the horses who would be presumably the main pace rivals in Art Collector and Swiss Skydiver. Then you also have the chance, I would think, of New York Traffic being ridden very differently this time. Felt to me anyway, like the pilot the last day was more interested in riding other horses in the race than his own mount, but that's a whole other story.
Conversation.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, do you think Johnny V is going to be hell-bent for leather for that lead and to replicate the success of the last day? Or do you think he's just going to let things play out and make the move when the time comes? How much pressure is he feeling right now, and what ultimate decision do you guess he's going to make?
I think he's got to go. I mean, Bob, for whatever reason it was, made it very, very, very clear that they were going to go in the Kentucky Derby. So why would the plan change in the Preakness? Why take away this horse's best attribute? And, you have to also look back to the race in which he lost in the Santa Anita Derby. I know there were other issues there, but I do think that this is a better horse when he's able to be on the lead. It doesn't matter how fast he goes. He can keep cruising along, but he does like to be in that forward position. So with that outside post, if I'm Johnny V, I would just go and let everybody else kind of dictate their moves from there. Clearly, this horse can reel off some pretty impressive fractions and keep going. So I'm thinking that's the move.
I'm interested in Art Collector. I know we're not going to be dealing with a huge price into the teeth of the favorite, but I just love the way this horse has trained. I love the preparation coming into the Derby. Obviously wasn't able to take the place in the lineup there due to the minor setback, but I just feel like this horse is still sitting on a very big race. I trust the hands he's in to fire his Derby race in this year's Preakness. And I feel like if your scenario ends up being correct, and I think you make a compelling case why Johnny V would just go, I feel like Art Collector has the option of potentially just letting him go, flopping outside a little bit and trying to finish. So just the same as basically what happened in the Bluegrass back in the penultimate race. I really like Art Collector in this spot. How do you see things shaking out for him? How serious of a contender and a threat is he to the big horse?
He's a major threat. He's the biggest threat for sure, because he's also coming into this race pretty fresh. I mean, I know he did have his minor setbacks, but talking to Tommy Drury, I even went out to the training facility in Kentucky before the Derby. It was a couple weeks before the Derby, just to chat with Tommy Drury and see Art Collector. And I have been on site really for his last two races at Ellis Park and at the Bluegrass, and you could see the weight that he kind of put back on in the Ellis Park Derby, because I think he really cranked him up for the Bluegrass, and then he let him be a little bit going into the Ellis Park Derby, and then he started to work him again and crank and turn those screws leading into the Kentucky Derby. It was unfortunate what happened, but I do think that this is a horse that is just durable too. I mean, he can run, he's consistent, he can continue to run, but he also fires fresh too. And Tommy just seems like he really understands this horse. So I think he's going to be able to fire, his best shot. It's just whether or not his best shot is going to be good enough to beat Authentic.
And that seems to be what's holding you back. Nothing about him, but just how ready you feel like Authentic is to show that the last race was a new level of ability as opposed to a high watermark.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at his last work after the Derby, Pete, I was watching it. I think he went 47 or something and change, and he was just floating over the surface. And I don't know, it just looks like he came out of the Derby, and he hasn't turned a hair. And if that's the case, then he looks pretty tough.
It's going to be tough. I'm hoping there'll be some other pace pressure and Art Collector can get the kind of trip that I want him to get. I'm certainly nervous if it ends up being some four-way scramble for the lead about Art Collector's ability to get that position and then still have the finish left in him to shake off all those rivals. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's a heavyweight title fight. Can't let you get out of here. I'd be accused of a host fail if I didn't ask you about the chances of Swiss Skydiver. Really compelling storyline heading into this year's race. I feel like in form terms, it's just hard for me to see her reversing with Art Collector, let alone Authentic. I'm interested in the storyline. I'll be thrilled for Connections for taking the bold move should she happen to get the job done. But I was probably, from a purely gambling perspective, going to be playing against. How serious of a factor do you see Swiss Skydiver being in this year's Preakness?
Me too. Like from a gambling perspective too, she is the filly in the race too. So, from a general public standpoint, people are going to be attracted to that. The price will probably go down. It's a great story. From a gambling perspective, I would rather replace her with some other long shots that offer better value and higher prices, like Pneumatic or some other long shots, whomever you believe in. I think it's very admirable, the campaign that she's been put on this year. And I love Kenny McPeak for taking the shot. And she does have a legitimate chance of winning if the other two that we previously mentioned don't show up. But again, we go back to the same thing. If she's able to fire her best, I still don't know if it's good enough to beat Art Collector and Authentic and the Preakness. But she could get a very nice setup, just kind of sitting back off of the pace inside and just going from there. I guess, there's a lot of pressure on her to win the Oaks between her and Gamine, right? And then She Dares the Devil was kind of like this upset winner. And I think a lot of people, I don't want to say soured on her after the Kentucky Oaks by any means, but maybe expected a little bit more. If we saw that, then yeah, I probably would put her in the top tier in my handicapping for the Preakness. But for me, from a betting standpoint, I can't go in that direction. But again, I do think it's been amazing watching her run. She's such a durable, big type of filly too, and she's incredibly talented.
If this does end up just being a crazy hammer and tongs meltdown, who do you think will be the beneficiary of that, of all the runners in the field, potentially? One of the ones we've talked about, or maybe one of the ones we haven't got to?
Probably Mr. Big News, right? I mean, he's kind of that horse that's just going to be sitting down on the inside, waiting for everything to kind of fall apart in front of him. And he didn't run a bad race in the Kentucky Derby. I was perplexed with his performance in the Bluegrass. And I think even Brett Calhoun kind of was too, because, he was, I know he's a long shot in the race, but he was kind of one of those long shot runners that people kind of liked. But yeah, I think he's probably the one horse that if there's a crazy pace meltdown, he will definitely be benefiting from it. Excuse me.
There is a scenario. I mean, if Art Collector decides, if let's say the inside is good or speed is good, and it pushes their hand to say, you know what, there ain't going to be no flopping outside. We've got to just take the race to the big horse. All of a sudden, that scenario becomes interesting, and especially for maybe one of them wins the battle and goes on to win the war. But at that point, Mr. Big News is pretty much running in to the lower rungs of exotics, I would think.
And like I should say, he's kind of the horse that I don't really like to use in the Kentucky Derby, because I like horses that have a little bit of natural speed, positional speed, that are going to be sitting in the first and second flight. And all considering, I thought he ran a really good race in the Kentucky Derby. And he, to me, seems more like a Preakness horse than a Kentucky Derby horse. So if you liked him in the Derby, given that performance, why not try him again in the Preakness?
1,000 Words is worth a mention, because being part of the Baffert team, obviously, this is a horse who I do not, has been on the lead, but you got to figure is going to get a hold up ride. Maybe another one who could benefit from a really fast pace with that grinding style and is obviously going to get the jump on the likes of Mr. Big News. I think the more we're talking about this race, I'm liking the idea of constructing some tickets where Mr. Big News and 1,000 Words get in the number underneath one or both of the big horses. Does that sound like a sound strategy to you?
Yeah, and talking about the pick 4 too, I mean, is this a scenario where you lean on Bonnie South in the sequence, have coverage in the Futurity and the Jimmy Murphy, and then also get a little bit creative in the Preakness? I mean, there's got to be one race in the pick 4 sequence that you feel confidently about. And if you feel confidently that Bonnie South can't lose, lean on her and make your money on the other legs.
I love the sound of it. Gabby, I kept you longer than I said I was going to. I was having too much fun talking to you, but thank you so much. We'll look for you, obviously, in all your TV work, and your Twitter is right up there on the screen for those watching, but for those listening, at Gabby_Gaudet_. Look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
As always, thank you so much, Pete.
Today's show brought to you in part by our friends at Stable Duel, a new, incredibly fun way to play the horses, combining elements of fantasy sports, fixed odds betting, and traditional horse playing. They've got an array of fun contests lined up for the big races this weekend, including a big Preakness Pimlico Saturday game. What you want to do for more information is go to RacingPicks.com, but what you want to do to play is download the Stable Duel app. Download the Stable Duel app today. Next up on the show, we have my buddy from the Stucast, Alan Studer. How are you, my man?
I'm doing good, PTF. You're looking dapper as usual.
I like the LSU shirt. That purple suits you.
Oh, I'm trying to get a job with Tom Amos. We're going all in, baby.
I think, you might have to start walking hots, but I think it could probably be arranged. What do you think?
I'm gonna replace JK. I'm coming for your spot, bud.
Oh my goodness. Let's dive in. We don't have a ton of time. We've got this pick 5 at Belmont on Saturday. We're starting off with race number 6, World Stakes. It's the Pilgrim, a grade 2. Alan, where are we going in here?
I think the logical is here. Everybody's going to lean towards the Chad, the number 3, and the Mott horse, American Monarch. I'm going to take a small shot with It's a Gamble. Kelly Breen really starting to come on as a trainer. In this past race, moving like a freight train after breaking slow out of the gate. I think this pace might be a little bit, it's cold. It's a slow pace forecasted on time form, but you never know. They grab in New York. So I'm going to take a shot with the 2, just throw underneath.
I'm going to play Nathan Detroit in this spot based on that pace angle you just mentioned. This one was impressive enough, not the strongest figure in the world in the debut race at Ellis, but nice looking workout since, and maybe a chance to get loose under Manny Franco to kick things off in the Pilgrim for me. I feel like sometimes with these 2-year-old races, that's a chance. I like to cleave as close to numbers as possible. But if I'm going to get a little bit creative, I feel pretty good doing it with young horses, don't have much form, developing all the time. I'm hoping that 8-1 morning line price becomes a reality, and I'm going to take an extra look at yours as well. Let's move on to the first of our 2 grade 1 races on the Saturday card. It is the Hirsch Classic, 1.5 miles on the turf. My eyes drawn to a stranger in here. Where are you going to go?
I'm going to like it's Cheers all over again, baby. Where your friends know your name. I've seen this race 400 times. Peddler's Joy, it's obvious, running on a bog last time. I think this horse is just going to be really good coming off that poor performance. And I guess Channel Maker, because I'll use the JK angle here. I pet the horse and fed it a carrot.
Channel Maker also potential pace advantage in this spot. Hopefully they're going to stop messing around. Look at when this horse has run well. This horse runs well when he goes up on the lead and rolls, and or there's some cut in the ground. I don't know about the cut in the ground for Saturday. I do know it looks like Manny Franco could boss this race as well. Maybe he'll have back-to-back front-running scores, but he's not my top pick. He's my backup. The top pick here for me is Masterpiece. This horse looking at the recent workout tab, I can't imagine Chad Brown choosing the spot if this one wasn't ready to rock and roll. I don't know if we're going to get the 8-1 of the morning line. We'll have a clue as to what the market's doing by looking into the double probable pool before the pick 5 begins. But in any case, there's going to be plenty of 2s and 3s on my tickets. And I do love Sadler's Joy. Probably not a bad idea to back up with one that has his abundant class. Let's talk about the Grade 2 Kelso, which goes as race number 8. It's a mile on the dirt. Short field, return to the races of Code of Honor, a perennial favorite of mine. But Alan, who are you going to play?
I'm going to give full credit to this for our mutual friend Tyler Hoffman of Trip No Pros. Shout out Benny South Street. Stand the Man. Yeah, last time took the blinkers off and it was a new horse. This horse is on the front, on the metal. He made a strong case. If Stan the Man was in the DeFrancis stash, I would be very interested to play with Landeskog, but I think going to show up here in the Kelso 5-horse field. You get some easy black type. I think Stan the Man absolutely makes the number, and that 8-1 I think has a shot. Also, complexity makes a ton of sense. A little against Code of Honor because I just don't know what that pace is going to end up looking like. But complexity, Stand the Man for me.
We sit in a similar spot. I think complexity is going to have what it takes to either wire this field or sit off, Stand the Man, and make that winning run. I'm still a huge Code of Honor fan. I feel like you had a couple of potential excuses the last day, but I hate the setup. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, maybe connections are thinking the one-turn mile is going to be what's best for him. And I could sort of see that in a race that has a ton of pace. This one doesn't. I think complexity is going to be able to boss things on or near the front. That's my top pick in the Kelso, one that you're going to be using as well, along with Stan the Man. And that brings us to more Grade 1 action. We've got 3-year-olds in the Belmont Derby going 1.25 miles on the inner turf. I'm enjoying having you kick these off. I like the rhythm we're in. We're going to do it one more time. What wins the Belmont Derby?
Well, we'll do it live. I think the Saratoga Derby, August 15th, where Gaffo and Domestic Spending were getting after it. I think this kind of plays out in a similar fashion. So I think those two, as unsexy a pick as it is, I think you got to give it to those two. Pixelate, I was trying to make a case for. I just don't think the figures are there. This horse isn't making a progression you would want to see at this point. So I was looking for a horse that's on the up and coming. And even though this horse screwed me over at Belmont last time, Venezuelan Hug is making a nice progression from 2 to 3. I think putting it together in that allowance race. And I mean, it's hard. It's really hard for me to evaluate these turf races at Saratoga because every single one is it's a beast, right? They're not set in stone. But the way Venezuelan Hug ran in that race showed some real grit, and I think there's more here. I think that progression in the figures, you're seeing it. I'm going to throw in and include with Gaffo and Domestic Spending.
It's interesting because I think the winner is coming out of the Saratoga Derby as well, but I like the one that ran 3rd in there. No Word. This is a horse I've had notes on since the debut race when I made note in my paper that I thought this was one who was going to eventually excel going 1.25 miles and longer. Gets that little bit of a stretch out here. We all know about trips and turf races, could easily reverse form just on trips. Nice inside draw under Ortiz in this spot. I think there's more to the picture than meets the eye with No Word. And I'm hoping that most people see it like you and look to that race and look at the top two. I have to admit, the 9-2 on the morning line had me feeling a little more meh. I handicapped this race without lines and was thinking, oh, here's a nice 6-1. We could get up into the number or maybe even win. We'll see what happens. I think your approach of spreading and getting a little bit creative in picks on some of the tickets is a good idea, but I'll also go back and have some combinations where I press number 1, No Word. With that, let's move on to our nightcap. We've got 2-year-old New York bred maidens going 6 furlongs on the turf. Tricky stuff. How are we going to get paid?
Look, man, I'm going to be honest. If this wasn't in the pick 5, I'd flip over to North Carolina, Boston College. Go Tar Heels. This is one of those races where, like, I'd be looking at you and go, hey, don't you got a Jimmy Buffer concert to go to? But,
What? I've been to a lot of concerts, but I've never been accused of being a parrot head before.
You look like you've wasted away in Margaritaville.
Well, that's fair.
I just give me the usual suspects here. I mean, I really don't know what to make of most of these. There's not much prior form. I gotta think if Chad's got a horse in here and Maker's got a horse and Asmussen's on the dirt last time out, but the pedigree just screams turf. I guess the one that I that's a price that I wanted to make a small case for was and you're the king of names. What is the 9's name? Mondius?
I like Mondius, I would say.
Mondius. Gosh. Well, I'm gonna karate chop you in the clavicle to get that French pronunciation. It's kind of subtle, but Donk and Cardenas is actually not a bad combo. And they do hit at a decent rate. And even though his craptastic JETS, Jets, he's going to have that hat on, it's going to be abysmal. I think this horse could make the number. The works are pretty nice. The 23rd September Belmont work from the gate. Nice bullet. Kind of very consistent, and I like the spacing of it. I'm not the perfect workout guy, but it was interesting to include in the number if you're going to play exactas or tries maybe, but I'm going to Kevin Spacey this and Kaiser Soze and usual suspects over here.
Oh, my goodness. All right. I think it's pretty clear that if you can spread in this race, that's going to be very tempting on at least some tickets. But when there's a race like this where everyone says spread, it's wonderful when you can narrow down too. So there'll be another ticket on which I get skinny. And the skinny numbers for me, She's a Majestic, just makes tons of sense. Asmussen, as much success as he's had lately with first-time starters, does incredibly well with second-time starters. I like this one's chances, having caught some money on debut, of doing a bit better here on the turf. And then the other one I definitely want involved is Black Licorice. I love this female family. 4 winners from 5 starters to make it to the races. Not as 2-year-olds, which I don't love, but these strong female families sometimes can make up for a whole lot of things. The horse will catch money with Maker and Ortiz, but I like the looks, so similar to what you were saying. No workout report, but I like the looks of the tab. I'm going to try to get out with on most of my action through the 5 and the 6. I do think you make a compelling case for number 9, Mondius, as well. We only have a minute, Alan, but I want people to get the skinny from you on where they can see more from you.
Oh, thank you, brother. Wherever you get your podcasts, I'm there. We're just generally, you've been on, you're coming back on. I'm going to make you come back on. Matt Premier's coming on. We just kind of talk sports all across the country with, various people. Norm Chad from the World Series of Poker, he was on talking poker. And then the very next moment, we're breaking down the college football slate. So
do you do any serious question? Do you do any wrestling? Because I'm involved with this new wrestling book that's going to be dropping for pre-order in the next few days. I'd love to put in some plugs for that.
I would love absolutely to do some wrestling. And, I've hit up guys. I just have not been able to have any success. I'm trying to hit up Meltzer, but you never know.
All right, we'll see. One of my co-authors on the new book is Alex Marvez. He might be an interesting one to have on with me as well. But anyway.
Wrestling forever. I love it, Pete. I'll talk to you offline about it.
Sounds good. Al, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, love you, Perry Mason. I love the work you do. Keep it up. Get those crooks, brother.
We're very excited to be partnering up with our friends at Keeneland for their Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, NHC Fall Handicapping Challenge. The date is October 10th. That's a Saturday and there's going to be lots of seats on the line. We just had the big announcement about the NHC. This year's NHC being pushed back to August, but you still have to qualify by the end of the year. This is going to be a great opportunity to do that, a great opportunity to win your BC seat. Jim Goodman of Keeneland, known for putting on the best contests out there. Maybe it's a dead heat with our friend Nate Newby out at Santa Anita, but they're fantastic affairs, these Keeneland contests. You can play via an array of ADWs. Get all the information and sign up. We made it easy for you. inthemoneypodcast.com/Keeneland. Go to inthemoneypodcast.com/Keeneland to sign up for the Keeneland Fall Handicapping Challenge today.
All right. The Thoroughbred Club of America, it's a grade 2, 6 furlongs for fillies. It's got a lot of speed signed on to the outside with the 7 Ladies Island in here, and Palace Avenger drawn just to the inside in the 5-hole. Also is a filly that tends to show a lot of speed, and the horse breaking from the rails, also one that will be forwardly placed. So as far as the speed goes in here, I like the 7 just for the draw. But for the win, I'm leaning towards Dos Vinos, the 2 horse, just simply because it appears like she's going to get a really good trip just setting behind the 1, 5, and 7. And if she's good enough on the day, she should be able to get first run. And she's already had a win over the track, and her running style seems to, fit for this setup. So that's who I'm going to lean on in the first leg of the All Stakes Pick 4.
Now, we did something different there. Usually I do the intro before we dive into the first race, but the way I cued you, you just took off, and it was great. So we're going to use it. We'll start the segment there, and now I will introduce my good friend, a professional horse player, a racing manager, so many things, successful contest player, Blake Jessee. How are you today, buddy?
I'm doing well, PTF. Thanks for having me on. It's a great weekend of racing ahead of us here.
I'm going to go ahead and give my pick for that first race as well. I came up with Sneaking Out in this spot. I just felt like this one's established herself as the leader of the division in California. And one of the little prejudices I've developed as a horse player over the year is in favor of sprint form shipping east. Now, I'm not sure if the statistics really bear that out at this Keeneland meet, but I do think Sneaking Out is another that I want to include in there. All due respect to Ladies Island on the outside for our mutual friends in Averill Racing and Matisse Racing Stable. Would certainly love to see her run well. But as far as my top pick goes, it's going to be Sneaking Out. And that race, that's the second race of the pick 5. And as you point out, the first race of the All Stakes pick 4. And then race 8 kicks off another pick 4, connecting the last 4 races on the card, as well as being the second leg, obviously, of the one we just kicked off. It's the Grade 1 First Lady going a mile on the turf. Blake, who did you like in here?
PTF, it's tough to get past Newspaper of Record, but, it's having seen her, go, to the Midwest a few times and just kind of, wait on somebody there in the final furlong and, been beaten at a short price a couple of times, twice at Churchill now. So, it's hard to get past her, but I really, I feel like that Daddy is a Legend is a horse that, is starting to, come back into that form where she was, at her top last year. So I just, at the price and at, how short Newspaper of Record's going to be. And I just feel like Daddy is a Legend may be the price and, may be ready to show that big performance today.
What's your general approach in pick 4s in this spot? Will you use Newspaper of Record as a backup? Will you use Daddy is a Legend and Newspaper of Record equally? Or will you just recognize, Newspaper of Record likely winner, but I'm going to fade her as far as my betting goes?
No, that's right. I'm going to use 1, 3, and 4 in here. I'm actually going to play against Uni. It just really hasn't, I haven't seen the sparks from her that I saw last year. So I'm going to play against her at a short price, and I'll use the 1, 3, and 4. But when it comes down to trying to hit it a few times and have multiple tickets, I'm going to press with the 3 and, try to, get a score going there.
I get it. I'm going to press newspaper of record. I'm just hoping that last time was a case where she just didn't use enough of that speed early. Maybe it would have worked against her and she would have just gotten beat by farther to close her Beau Recall. But maybe by being in danger of giving the whole field the slip early, puts pressure on Beau Recall to move early and increases that tactical edge. I feel like her best weapon is to just go hammer and tongs and go out there and run that 46 and play come and catch me. And I think they're going to probably try that approach today. I'd like to think. I've thought that in the past when they haven't. It's tough. I feel like she's clearly tricky to ride. Irad down with the COVID, obviously not there to ride. I'm hoping Gaffalione channels the kind of rides Irad was giving her earlier this year, and we could see newspaper of record back in the winner's circle. We'll find out on Saturday afternoon. Let's talk about the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity. I'll go first here because I don't think my opinion is terribly interesting. I'm just a huge Calibrate fan. JK made the case on our Let Loose show that, not the case, just made the point that when interviewed directly after this impressive maiden win at Saratoga, Steve Asmussen didn't hedge one bit. What's the next spot? We're going to point to the Breeders' Futurity. This has been such a key prep for the BC Juvenile over the years. I imagine that's what they've been thinking all along for this one. Obviously, there's some other really talented runners in this spot, but for me, it's all about Calibrate. Where did you land?
Okay. With these races, something to always keep in mind with 2-year-olds is, they're improving literally with each, gallop in the morning, with each meal. They can either go forwards or they can go backwards. I have it down to 5 in here. I have 2, 4, 7, 8, 9. And, the 2-horse Upstriker, 8-1 on the morning line, got a really good figure for the first start of its life. And, if I can get anywhere near 8-1 on that horse, I will definitely be, betting that horse straight up. But as for a price, I keep coming back to King Fury, a horse that's actually gone 2 turns already. That can be a big advantage in here. Although I will say with, this being a short stretch finish, it does kind of, give, these horses that are making their first start around 2 turns, it gives them a little bit of an edge to, here, we're not going to make you run the full stretch. But so, that is something that, to take into consideration. But I can see why you and JK like Calibrate so much. But it just figures to be a shorter price than the Upstriker, pardon me. So I'm going to, use 2, 4, 7, 8, 9 and play some extra tickets with the 2.
If anything, I'm mildly against Essential Quality just because I thought that was a great setup in the race at Churchill. I totally get using as an include just based on the figures, though. But what's your sense of who's ultimately going to be the best horse to come out of this race?
Ooh, that's that's tough. But I'm looking at Founder. $600,000 OBS purchase. But yeah, Calibrate really does have the look of a horse that you may want to put in your stable mail to look for down the road.
Let's talk.
Go ahead.
Oh, you go. I was going to pivot to the 10th race, but finish your thought on Calibrate for sure.
No, I was just saying, you see Asmussen do this, every year. So it kind of smells of a horse like that.
Let's move on now to race number 10, the Grade 1 Shadwell Mile. This is a race that has a lot of familiar faces. Where are you going to land?
Well, PTF, it's not so much where I'm going to land; it's where I'm going to be against, and I'm going to be against Halliday in this spot. On paper, looks good enough to eat, but this is actually the first time in a while that Halliday is going to be shipping. So, it's not really running out of its home box. And, I'm going to take a shot against in this spot. Now, spread now, I'm definitely going to be doing that here. But there is a long shot here that, has my attention. And it's the 5 Born Great. Lightly raced, 20-1 on the morning line. Stretching out around 2 turns for the first time. But has done nothing wrong in these first 3 starts. So, definitely a horse that I'm going to be playing, in verticals as well, not just in my horizontals. But And then another horse on the far outside, a Brazilian bred horse, Ivar. They're taking the hood off. And I feel like they put the hood on this horse just to kind of get him going after he shipped here and, you know, trying to wake him up after that first start. And it did. So I feel like now that they've kind of got him awake and running, that, you know, this is a spot they're going to take the blinkers off. And I don't like the post, obviously, but the price is going to be right. And, you know, when the horse was in Brazil, he'd won every race open links. So could be anything. And
I think
definitely one I'm going to be using.
Good. I like those ideas at longer prices. I have one I think should be a square price as well. Number 9, Parlor, I thought was interesting for Maker. Very tough to run well at Kentucky Downs off a layoff, excuse me. I thought this horse acquitted himself admirably, and for me almost has to move up with that race behind him. Fits on previous figures and form. I feel like the race will be run to suit. Give me Parlor in the Shadwell Turf Mile, and I'm going to take an extra look at those long shots.
Yeah, and add to that, Pete, you know, that your horses, you know, had 4 runs over the Keeneland Turf, and, you know, 3 of them's been in the money. So definitely a horse for course.
Excellent. Another one potentially to include. I'm kind of with you about being against Halliday this time around. Just seems like it's a different type of course. It's a different type of pace situation. And I think, you know, I'm tired of the Without Parole and Raging Bull show. I feel like we're headed in the right direction, looking for some strangers. Blake, let's move on to our final race number 11 at Keeneland, that will pay off the second pick 4. We've got 3 and up allowance runners going 7 furlongs on the dirt. A couple minutes to talk about it. How are we going to get paid?
Well, you know, it's a good question. And I've just checked the scratches for today. And Edgemont Road, the 6 horse, has come out of Friday's race and is going to run today or Saturday. So, you know, the 6 horse Edgemont Road, the only speed in the race, so to speak. And, you know, several factors here. Is in lifetime best form. And, you know, we're talking about a horse that's going to get to run out of its own stall. You know, it's based at Keeneland. So I really feel like, you know, all the arrows are pointing towards Edgemont Road.
I'm with you. That's the one I wanted to pick as well. I think there's a pace angle here, and I was doing a little bit of deep digging for a Keeneland meet preview that I just posted over at attheraces.com, and was particularly impressed looking into some of the advanced jockey metrics on Declan Cannon. That was the only other point I was going to make about Edgemont Road that you didn't already make. So, yeah, let's see if we can get the money here in this, in both of these late pick 4s. Blake, what else has been going on with you? We got one minute left. Where can folks find more from you in social media? And feel free to plug anything that needs plugging.
Well, you know what? I'm just staying busy, you know, playing the races every day. You can find me on Twitter at Hong Kong Blake. And, you know, feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions. But, yeah, I'm playing the races every day just like you guys.
That's awesome. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, you're going to be playing in the Keeneland Fall Contest this year.
Absolutely. That's my favorite contest. I'll be there, and hopefully I'll be there. But, yeah, I'll either play online or I'll be there.
Looks like they're going to have a plethora of online options for that one. They haven't made any final decisions yet. I mentioned it in the ad we dropped in here somewhere in the show, but folks looking for more details about that fantastic contest run by our buddy Jim Goodman can go to inthemoneypodcast.com/Keeneland. Blake Jessee, we're going to have you back on soon for a longer visit. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thank you, PTF.
Just want to let folks know about a couple things we have going on with our friends at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. One of them is our inthemoneypodcast.com whiskey. There are still a few bottles left. We're going to be shipping them out very soon. If you go to trfinc.org/players and make the appropriate donation, I will gift you a bottle of the inthemoneypodcast.com whiskey. The only way you can obtain a bottle. It's delicious. Barrel picked from Albany Distilling Company that I made myself. 6-year-old American malt whiskey. Also, we want to let you know you're going to be hearing a lot more about this, but the Blackburn Horse Show coming up later this month. We want you to go to our page and read all the details about that. And if you're in the Capital District this Saturday, we're going to be having a little Preakness party. You can read the details on the site as well, trfinc.org/players. You can come, you can spend money, and a donation will be going to the TRF. We're going to be doing this one at Harvey's up on the roof. So check it out. It's going to be great. trfinc.org/players. Last but not least on today's show, we have a returning guest. He covers all things Woodbine over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. He's also our business manager. He's my friend, Drew Coatney. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing very well. We've run long on the show today, so we've only got just a hair under 10 minutes left to talk about these 4 stakes races. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Things start off with the Toronto Cup Stakes going 1 mile on the turf. And this is a race where we see the very fast return to the races of Cheryl Spite, who maybe just found the water a little bit too deep back on Woodbine Mile Day. I'm such a huge fan of this horse. I'm uncreative. I can't see past him, so I'll quickly, normally I'd defer to the guest. I'm going to give my boring opinion fast and quick because I have a feeling you're going to be a little bit more creative here.
I think so. I think Cheryl Spite didn't beat much in the last 2 events. And the hiccup in training with the cough on the way to the Derby gives us pause at 4-5. Now, is the horse the best? I think has the most upside in terms of ceiling. And I think the most logical in this terms of just looking at the tote board, Proven Strategies looks to be great on paper. Trying to beat the likes of Fancy Liquor, came back and won a stakes race just recently. Structor, Decorated Invader, the list goes on. Some really nice company, gets the rail, speed away. Let's go. Should be dry tomorrow as well. The horse I got a little creative with was the number 3 Duke of Carthania. Had a terrible behavior down at Fairgrounds, so much so that it even made the PP running line of acting up in the paddock. Last out, 2 back, I should say, figured it all out. I love that this horse sat patiently. It showed cool, calm collection, bottled up behind horses, waiting for that hole to open up with a 16th left, and looked so sharp that day. I think this one has some upside, and especially at the value we're going to get today of 20-1 or higher. You're going to get the third off the layoff, cycle up for Cassie. Did a great workout September 5th. And just last out, look, that was just too sharp. It just wasn't going to work that day. Today gets the much better distance. This one could come at a bomb of a price if some of these others don't show up today. Fun fact, too, this one debuted against Art Collector. So there you go.
There's the form angle on top of everything else. Much more from Drew on all these races in his write-up in themoneypodcast.com, where he'll cover Woodbine Saturday and Sunday. For now, though, and we should say, some of these big prices he's been mentioning have been coming in, including the cold $300 exacta in this year's Queen's Plate. I'm still amazed at that one. All right, let's talk about race number 9 right now. It's the Duchess Stakes. Phillies 3-year-old going 7 furlongs on the synthetic. And now I will let you kick things off.
Yeah. Ellen J. Foxwoods, I think, has a good one in here with Boardroom. It was a shame to see the reins broke or the bridle broke. The connection said the bridle, but then Ron Gearkick reports the reins. So something broke along the way. Almost tried to win the race at the top of the stretch. I think Contreras did everything just to keep the horse from injuring himself. Running into others, herself. So I'm excited to see this one. I think this one's the most logical. What gets the other one that, like, if you're value oriented, maybe underneath or could just wire this field, Wind Racer, 20-1, Jack Sisterson ships in, third off the layoff, cycle up, and was trying to beat some really good horses. And the pace flow was definitely advantageous to be behind. It selflessly dove to the rail and then ducked out 3 paths to just get past Sweet Melania at the wire in Saratoga with the Lake George. So Wind Racer, it has an interesting look. 20-1 seems like a little too high. I think we'll probably see 8-1, 10-1. Just depends on how much the likes of Owlette and Boardroom are going to take. Where'd you go?
I was with you on Boardroom. It's just the trip handicapper in me can't see the equipment break on a horse and the horse still make a competitive, menacing looking run at 3-5 and not want to get back on board, hoping we're going to get something near the 2-1 predicted on Ernie Perry's morning line on this one. So not much to add from me, but I do like your creative pick with Wind Racer. I love I love Jack Sisterson as a trainer. I think that's really creative and one that should be forward, and I'm going to take another look at and probably end up including as well. But Boardroom for me in race number 9. That moves us on to race number 10, another race where I ended up landing on the favorite. Looking at the 3 and up maidens here, going a mile and a 16th on the turf. It just looked to me like Curlin's Thrill was going to get a nice run through the race. Slight concern about maybe the run last time was a little bit flattered, but I'm still thinking just on form and figure terms that Curlin's Thrill is one I want to have on tickets. I do want to spread a little bit in here, so I'll throw it to you and get your thoughts on some of the others to use.
Yeah. This race starts with Lion Kingdom and Curlin's Thrill as well, the 5 and the number 6. I think the 6 had the worst of the trips and showed the best ability, making a huge wind-up move, going like 5 or 6 wide and finishing on terms with Curlin's Thrill. And that was a fun race to watch for second place. U.S. Army Corps did run a great loose on the lead type of event there. So there wasn't much we could do about that. The horse that I do like, and my goodness, we got to get some creative glasses on for this one, is the number 3 Wings of Victory. It's like I'm a 20-1 repeat person. They have to hit eventually, right? So, but I love Wings of Victory. Debuted and had the win, had everything go right. Showed a great windup on the inner going a mile. So it's the 1-turn configuration for them at the mile, I believe. And got DQ'd, came back. Go ahead.
It is. I was just correct.
Oh.
Just agreeing with you.
Oh, thank you. And then came back on the poly and got put up on rest for 6-7 months or so. Came out, faced some company that, like, we'll just excuse it. Let's just put it that way. Too sharp at 6.5, and then had a bit of a trip the last time around. And so I think this one hasn't been able to refine the winner's circle, and today should get that better stalking trip, should stay within touch of this field. Because remember, the 2 favorites aren't going to be loose on the lead here, as we've seen in the other ones. So I'm excited for this one to come off the 3rd off the layoff. I would not leave it off of any of your horizontal plays. I could expect to see this one as a 12-1, 15-1 on the board on the day, because you just got to get back to that debut form. So the number 3 Wings of Victory, 20-1 for me.
Let's talk about the nightcap 3 and up maidens, 123,000 in the pot, going 7 furlongs on the synthetic. Drew, how are we going to get paid?
Yeah, I'm not too exciting here. The number 7 Red Storm Risen, 4-1 on the morning line, gets the blinkers on, has been running some solid races. Looks like didn't want Kentucky Downs turf, but again, ran a decent race down the lane on that odd configuration. So replays are a little hard to view, but Woodbine showed the great speed and tried to hold off the likes of Belichick, which we saw what happened in the Queen's Plate. So this one looks to be the best form on paper, but I mean, you could go so many ways here. I would be really leery to hone in on just one to try and get paid in this pick 4.
I'm with you on Red Storm Risen. Let's go very quickly. I see 2 opportunities for head-to-heads. One would be something involving Cheryl Spite, depending on how much you're against, because I'm very much for, but I don't know that it's fair to just offer, even if I offer you the rest of the field, I'm not sure if that one's quite fair. And then also our 2 horses in race number 10. I would be willing to take Curlin's Thrill over Lion's Kingdom. I thought that Curlin's Thrill moved a little bit earlier and therefore maybe had the slightly tougher trip than Lion Kingdom, who made the last move into that hot pace. So I offer you either of those 2 as head-to-head possibilities, or potentially we could do both. We get one and then we get a double for nothing if you like them both.
Let's do race 10. Give me Wings of Victory as well, and Lion Kingdom against Curlin's Thrill. Is that fair?
It's probably fair, because Wings of Victory is going to be such a long price that on the math, adding my 5, you're adding your 3-1 and 20-1 and my 5-2. I'll do it. Yeah. Challenge accepted, my friend. And we look forward to reading your stuff over at inthemoneypodcast.com and having you back on here very soon.
Thanks, Pete. Have a good one.
That's going to do it for this edition of the show. I want to thank today's fantastic guests, Gabby Gaudet, Alan Studer, Blake Jessee, and Drew Coatney. Also want to thank our friends over at RacingPicks.com. Remember, lots of great free picks and information over at RacingPicks.com. RacingPicks.com. Want to thank producer Craig, DJ Unstable, Craig Gorbanoff, all the fantastic work that he does. Most of all, want to thank all of you, the listeners, for making these shows, and viewers for making these shows so much fun to do. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornital. May you win all your photos.